What's going on, Eurovoxers? Hello, Jess. Hello, Paolo. So it's all come down to this. After 5 semifinals, the list of 25 artists has now been reduced to 10. One of them will be representing Norway at the Eurovision Song Contest in Rotterdam. Who's it going to be? We're going to find out this Saturday, so let's talk about it. So if you've been following us lately, we've done a few videos already on the semifinals that have been happening for Norway. So some of the songs that we haven't actually talked much about are the pre-qualified songs. So let's start with those ones. The first one from semifinal 1 was Sandri with the song Take My Time. Jess, tell me what you think about this one.
Yeah, so Sandri kind of started off the pre-qualifiers of MGP with this very kind of funky, poppy, dancey kind of sound. And he had a good staging to match as well, from what I remember. He was in a very flashy, bright red suit, and he had lots of kind of flashing lights, I think, as well, which, in my opinion, suited the song very well. I have to say, the style of the song is not to my personal taste, but I can see how people would like it, and I can see that it's a good song. I don't think it's going to trouble the voting that much in the final. I can't see it winning or doing very well. But I mean, for sure, it's a fun song.
Mm-hmm. I feel like this one is, it feels really polished. It kind of reminds me of something that you would see from Melfest. Which for some people that might not be a compliment. For me, it's a compliment. I mean that in the best possible way. But yeah, it just feels really sleek. I like the presentation of it. I like the light up microphone poles and just the funky vibe of it. Perhaps it's not. Perhaps it doesn't have as much power as you would expect something of that kind to have. But I think that it's pleasant enough that people will probably enjoy it. And I think that it could move on to at least the first tier of voting, because it will be, after all 10 songs perform, the top 4 will move to duels of their own. And then there will be a final duel to determine the winner. So that's how I feel about it. How do you feel, Paolo?
I think it's a cool song. Like, I think he sings it very well, and his performance was pretty good. It's quite memorable with all the lights and the way he was styled. Like, I'm kind of with Jess. The song style is not really my personal taste, but I can see that it could pick up the votes with people that do like this style of song. And like, exactly just like you said, it's quite polished in terms of its performance. Like, it doesn't really need that much adjustment, and I feel like with this type of performance and song, it can probably bounce off better in a bigger stage, which this will be, because it's not going to be in the same arena as it was in the previous semi-finals. It's going to be in Trondheim this time, which is a much bigger arena. So I feel like it might bounce off better with a larger audience and a larger stage. So we'll see how it will look like on the day.
I just want to take my time with you.
In the second semifinal, we got a taste of the song by Diedrich and Emil called Out of Air. Jess, how did you feel about this one?
I actually really liked this song, actually. Some words I've used to describe the song, it's quite dated, quite cheesy. But then again, that's my musical taste anyway, so that explains why I like it. But I thought that Diedrich and Emil performed the song very well on stage. Obviously we know that they're going to be good performers anyway, and Diedrich's already been at Eurovision, so they performed it very well. It was very simple staging from what I can remember, very much focused just on them and their vocals. It's a very catchy song. I like it. It's good, it's fun, it's cheesy, it's poppy. It does kind of sound like a 90s boy band reject, but I'm loving it anyway. I personally can't see it doing very well in the final, just because I think they're up against some quite tough competition, and I don't think it's at that level, but still it's enjoyable and pleasant to listen to.
And it's interesting because a lot of the reasons why you like it would probably be reasons why other people won't like it. I think that they have a lot of charisma when they perform, but as you mentioned, considering what they're going against songs from this millennium, at least. Not to be that blunt, but this probably won't be to everyone's taste, and I can't see it doing super well. Maybe it could make it to that second tier, but we'll have to see. Paolo, your thoughts?
All the reasons that Jess said why she liked it is exactly the reason why I don't really like this that much. Yeah, it's very cheesy, it's very dated. Credit where credit's due, they know how to perform. They're classically trained performers, and they have that in their strength. Personally, for me, it's just a bit too dated for me. Like, good luck to them in the final. Like, I wish them the best of luck. Just personally for me, it just doesn't resonate well with me, but just because it is quite cheesy and quite dated.
What if our love is running out of air tonight? Your silence is the warning sound. And what if our heart can't drown in tears of cry?
So on the other side of things, we've got Akuvi, who performed in the third semifinal with her song Som du Er. This is the only song currently in Norwegian in the final. We've seen a few compete in the semifinals, but this is the only one that's left. Paolo, how did you feel about Akuvi?
I quite like this one. It's very cool. She is a good performer, and she sings it really well. And I'm always a sucker for any sort of song that's in their native language, so it has that in its strengths, in my personal opinion. It was staged really well. She sings it really well, and the song is really cool. I personally think it could do well when it comes to voting, because it does stand out, and it is quite modern as well. I think it will do well when it comes to the voting, and if it does go to the super finalist or the final two or whatever it is, I wouldn't be surprised, because I just think it is that cool of a song. I quite like this. I really do like this, and I hope to see it do well.
Mm-hmm. It is great to see something that does feel pretty fresh. And for me, I've seen a lot of parts of the production that I really like, particularly in the moments when they're doing a dance break and they've got these kind of vocal chops happening. I think that if this does make it to Eurovision, there might be some some obstacles as far as being able to do that again. But I know that exceptions have been made, because, for example, one entry from Norway, Joust, with what was that song called in 2017? Grab the Moment.
Oh yeah,
Grab the Moment.
Yeah, because there were some affected or filtered vocal samples that were allowed. But then when you think about someone like Netta with Toy, she had to reproduce those sounds using her backup singers. So that might be an obstacle. Jess, your thoughts on Som du Er?
I kind of quite like this one, actually, and pretty much what Paolo said is very modern and fresh, and it's just like a nice, cute Norwegian bop. And I think I loved that it was in Norwegian as well. It kind of gave a little bit something different, and I think that might help it to stand out a little bit, because it's the only Norwegian language song. Fingers crossed.
So you'll have to pardon the pun, but one that's certainly been getting a lot of attention would be Ulrike with her song Attention. This is at the top of a lot of people's lists to win the whole thing. Paolo, your thoughts on Ulrike?
She has a voice. She really does have a good voice. She can perform it very, very well. I can definitely see why she is the favorite among the fans, because the voice is there, and the song is also there. It's a really lovely ballad. It does stand out. It showcases her vocals really, really well. I can see this do well in the national final. If the votes, if anything, the juries will definitely get behind this for sure. And I think it will do well. I really do think it will do well.
I was trying to think back to the last time that Norway sent a ballad, and if I'm thinking correctly, it would be 2015 with Moreland and Deborah
Yeah.
with the song Monster Like Me. And it's interesting because one of those two people is actually one of the songwriters on the song. It's Moreland. He co-wrote this with a member from the boy band A1 and Ulrike herself. I mean, the quality stands out. It's right there in front of you, and Ulrike really brings the performance to life with her voice. Really, like, near perfection with her singing. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised again if this does well. I think that it certainly would be a deserving winner. I guess it just comes down to how it's going to go with those duels and whether or not it will be able to get all the way to the top. Jess, your thoughts on Ulrike?
Well, to kind of put a dampener on things, I'm not loving it as much as you guys are. It's not really to my personal taste, but I can totally understand why people love this so much and why it's a huge favourite to win. And I do think it will be a big contender for the win in the final next week. And I think also the fact that it's a ballad, I think is going to help it stand out, because most of the songs in the final are very upbeat and kind of poppy. So this one's just something totally different. It's kind of stripped back. It's raw. It's full of emotion. And I think even if it doesn't win, it's going to do very well in the show. And I reckon it's going to be huge in Norway at least anyway.
And I think, unlike a song like Out of Air, this one, it keeps the simple qualities of a ballad where it feels kind of timeless. So it doesn't have that disadvantage of it feeling dated. But of course, if the audience is full of Jesses, then maybe that won't matter.
Come on, Norway, you know what to do.
Last but not least, we have the song Hurt Sometimes by Tone Damli. This was performed just this past Saturday at semi-final 5. Paolo, your thoughts on Hurt Sometimes?
As we all know, like, Tone Damli is a veteran with Melodi Grand Prix. The last time she competed was in 2009. So she's was very familiar with the whole Eurovision scene. And it shows in this song, because it's quite... when I was listening to it, I just felt like there was a Eurovisionness about it. Whether it could do well in the final, I'm not exactly sure, but it could. It has a lot of potential, to compete with the other songs to get the ticket to Eurovision. But I personally quite like it, and I wouldn't be surprised if other people do quite like this as well.
And it is always good to have a familiar face. I don't know if it's going to be so familiar to the public in Norway, since it has been some time since she was competing there. Not Paolo, I just talked to you. Jess, what do you think about Tone?
I actually really like Tony's song, and I do agree with Paolo. When I was listening to the song and watching her performance, there was just kind of an air of Eurovision about it. Like, you could almost envision this on the Eurovision stage. She performed the song very well. It does, I think, have an element of cheese in it, which is probably why I love the song. It was this kind of poppy, cheesy song that I think could do very well in Melodi Grand Prix. And I think it has, and Tony has all that it takes to take it to like the final round of voting in MGP. I just wonder whether or not she'll kind of, because there's a lot of competition in MGP this year, so I'm wondering if her song is going to be good enough, if that makes sense.
So those are the 5 pre-qualified songs. There are another 5 songs that have won their semifinals that we've already spoken a little bit about, but let's kind of revisit those and talk about their potential success at the final. So going back to semifinal 1, the winner of that one was Rayleigh with her song Wild. And this, of course, has some flavors of Fuego in there with Anders Breathoff on the writing team. So we'll call this maybe Fuegocito or Fuego Salvaje. Jess, your thoughts on Rayleigh?
I love Rayleigh's song, actually. It's just this with this very strong kind of poppy, dancey song. It's very catchy. She performed it very well in the semi-final, and I have no doubt that she'll give another great performance in the final. I do think this is one to watch out for, and I think this is a potential winner.
It seems like it. It seems like the love for it is certainly there. I know that for some people, this is like their favorite song of all the national selections across the Eurovision sphere, if you want to call it that. Paolo, where does Rayleigh's song land for you?
I quite like it. Like it's definitely one of the most energetic songs of this national selection, which makes it stand out by far and away. She performs it very well. Like when she performed it on the first semi-final, like you could tell that she had the energy and the vocal capacity to do this song. Like dancing as well as singing at the same time is not an easy feat to do, and she pretty much nailed it in the semi-final. So like it is one of my favorites for sure. Whether Eurovision wants to see another Fuego style song for the 3rd year in a row, I'm not exactly sure, but it's still a really good song. No one can deny that.
So let's move on to semi-final 2. That one was, of course, our friend Rain Alexander bringing the Viking vibes. This one I know is a favorite for a lot of people as well. How do you feel about Rain, Paolo?
This is epic. I love this so much. It's like, it screams that it's wanting to go to Eurovision and it should be in Eurovision. And that people would love this if this came on the Eurovision screen. It has elements of the Danish entry of 2018 from a couple of years ago, Rasmussen, amped up by 100. It's epic is just the best way I could describe it. Like the staging, the performance, the vocals, it's just completely epic. It's in my top 2 for sure, 100%. I wouldn't be disappointed if this ended up going to Eurovision. I just love this.
And I think, Jess, this was your favorite from that semi-final as well. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I absolutely love this song. And it's my favorite from MGP this year in general. And like Paolo said, it's just this kind of epic Scandinavian Viking song that's just brought to life on the stage by this big kind of burly man. And yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's this kind of up-tempo, epic, slightly cheesy song. It's got elements of Rasmussen. It's got elements of the Swedish guy, I've forgotten his name, Roger Ponte. And I just think it would be perfect for Eurovision.
One last time we give it all. We chain our hearts, we unbreakable. One last time we go to war.
So the winner from semi-final 3, I'm pretty sure was all of our favorites. This was Kristin Hussoy with her song "Pray for Me," the kind of rootsy. To me, it reminds me a little bit of Serena Ryder. I don't know how many people know who Serena Ryder is, but she's great. Jess, what did you think of Kristin?
I really liked Kristin's song, and to me, it kind of had a slight folk element to it. I find this kind of poppy, folksy kind of song. It's very kind of easy on the ear, very pleasant to listen to. She gave a good performance, and I am really hoping that she does well in the final. I think she could do well in the final, actually, and she could maybe kind of make it into the top 4, top 5, perhaps, because it is a very good song.
Mhm. We had lots of good things to say about her when we were talking about that semifinal. I think all of us really liked the simplicity of the staging, which is, I have to say, kind of refreshing in this selection, because there are a lot of stages that tend to lean a little bit on certain ideas. So I certainly really appreciate the simplicity. I think, in my opinion, I think the only thing that needed to change was that there should be a little bit more vocally. Like, I think that she could bring the energy up a little bit more. What did you think, Paolo?
I like just said, I do like this song. I thought it was the best song of that semi-final. One thing that did stand out with that performance was her, like, she was selling that song, definitely, for sure. Like, in terms of her performance, she gave it some attitude. She gave it her all, and it just stood out on that night. Putting that into consideration of like the whole of the final, now that we know all the songs, I do worry that it might not stand out, because it is a strong final this year for Melodi Grand Prix, and because she's going up against about so many songs that could have the potential to get the title. It does worry me that this might not do as well as we initially thought. But I hope that she does, because I quite like the song.
The best kind of insanity. Somebody pray for me.
Then, of course, from semifinal 4, we had Magnus with his song "Over the Sea." Of course, this was that kind of folk pop, Norwegian folk pop jig, if you want to call it that. Paolo, I know that this one really stood out for you. I remember you talking about the violin and the key change, and then how that really ticked off a box for you. So, do you still believe in this one?
I still stand by this. This is my favorite of that night, and this is my favorite of the national selection. That, like, it does take a lot for a song to make me smile throughout the entire thing, and I just like, it's just so cute. It has a hook to it with the violin and everything like that. It has a familiar Norwegian sound, if you can call it that, because of the violin, and you kind of associate Norway with the violin because of Alexander Rybak. And yeah, like I just love it. Like, it just makes me smile. It just makes me happy whenever I hear it. And if that can invoke that much emotion out of me, I would like to assume that it would invoke that emotion from other people as well. And whether that can resonate with points, it could possibly. I'm not exactly sure, but it definitely is. I think it's one to watch for this final, for sure.
Is Jess going to be feeling those emotions too?
Unfortunately not, I'm afraid. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do love the song. I think it's a very sweet and charming song. And I love this sort of the violin touch, as Paolo said, giving it a Norwegian sort of feel to the song, which I think Alexander Rybak might have had some kind of say in. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, the song, it's just this kind of very sweet, simple song with a charming singer, with a lovely violin part to it. But even though I do think it is a good song, is it going to be good enough to stand out against, people like Rain Alexander or Rike, for example? That I'm not quite sure about. But the song, just of its own accord, is very good anyway. I'm just not sure it's strong enough against all the competition we have this year.
Might be better, and it might be wrong. Will we ever figure out who we belong?
So last but not least, our most recent winner of semifinal 5 was Lisa with her song "I Am Gay." Jess, are you feeling this song? What do you think?
I mean, I have to be honest, it's not one of my favorite songs from MGP this year. I think in general, semi-final 5 was probably the weakest semi-final. So I kind of think that this song I think is quite weak. It's kind of quite forgettable in my opinion. I mean, she did give a very good performance of the song. And the title of the song is of course very kind of going to catch people's eyes, definitely. But I don't think it was best from that semi-final, and I think Erin in the Wood should have qualified instead. So I don't think this is going to do too well in the final. But you know, it is a good, pleasant song to listen to that was performed well.
Mhm. There is, of course, a story with this, and depending on who you talk about, it could be a bit controversial. And it's the fact that despite the title, Lisa is not gay, or at least if she is, she hasn't made a statement about it. But basically, she has spoken out about this as if this is kind of like her being supportive of those of people who are gay. This isn't quite working for everyone. How does it work for you, Paolo?
It's not my personal favorite of that night. Like Jess said, I thought Ellen in the Woods would have was my personal favorite, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. It has an energy to it, and it has a good message. It stood out on the night, that's for sure. So that's probably why it did qualify. The song wasn't my personal favorite. There was something about the performance which felt off with me. I thought that she could have sold it a bit more, like give it a bit more attitude, like and give a bit more maybe sass. Call it that, because I feel like it felt like she was restraining herself a little bit in her performance. That's what I gathered. But who knows? She has a week to work on things and that sort of stuff. It's not my favorite, but it has some energy to it, and it has a good message at least.
All right, so we've already given you an earful about what we think about these songs. Let's bring it down to a winner. Jess, who's your number one? Who do you think, or at least who do you think has the best chance of winning?
The person who I think is going to win is either Ulrike or Tony, but the one that I want to win is Rain Alexander.
Paolo?
I think that Ulrike could potentially win. My personal favorite is Magnus or Rain. I would love them to win, for sure.
Okay. Similar to you guys, I think that, well, differently, because Ulrike is my favorite. However, I think that it might be a Rain Alexander or Rayleigh who actually wins, just kind of based on how we've seen the semifinals unfold. But of course, there is, even though we've already seen these songs performed, as Paolo mentioned, this is a different stage, a bigger stage as well. So there could be changes that really, turn things on their head. So there's lots more to find out. Let us know in the comment section which ones are your favorites and which ones you think have the best chance at winning. Don't forget to follow us on all of our socials: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Leave us a comment. Subscribe to Eurovoxx. Reach us at eurovoxx.net, and we'll see you next time. Take care, guys.
Bye.
I said buys.
No one noticed. It's fine.